Hello everyone, and thank you for coming to Leatherhead Theatre for this Transform Leatherhead seminar on such a windy and rainy night. It is really appreciated. And I'd also like to say a thank you for everybody who is watching at home as we're live streaming this. And after it's been live streamed, we will be putting it up on the Transform Leatherhead website so that more of our residents can see the presentation and engage with it. So I think it's fair to say it's been some time since we were here in this theatre discussing Transform Leatherhead. Since that time we've had lockdown, and after that we've been holding some more informal Transform Leatherhead chat sessions, as well as drop-in sessions at the Swan Centre and at the Leatherhead Institute. However, now feels a good time to be back here at the theatre as we start off a whole range of consultations as we move forward with this project. Some of you may be aware that in October last year, we saw the achievement of a key milestone in Transform Leatherhead, with Mole Valley District Council and Kier Property Development setting up a new joint venture for the Swan Centre and Ball Hill. So we are delighted tonight to be joined by Lee and Alex from Kier Property, who will be presenting shortly. And those of you who came to previous forums may remember that we do invite an external speaker to talk about more broader issues in terms of town centre regeneration. And tonight we have Katia Poliado from the architects T.P. Bennett, who are part of the design team working on the joint venture. And again, you'll be hearing from her as we go through the presentations. As well as myself, Bridget Kendrick, Deputy Leader at Mole Valley District Council, Councillor Kira Vivian Robinson will be updating on the various strands of Transform Leatherhead, and I'm going to touch on some key initiatives that affect high streets in Leatherhead, but also across our district. We have a number of Mole Valley District Council officers tonight, and between us, we hope that we can answer most, if not all, of the questions. We have a Mentimeter system, which I'm going to run through in a moment, to enable those who are watching at home and those who watch it afterwards to engage. And some people do like to use online tools for asking questions as well, really to broaden that sense of engagement in questions with Transform Leatherhead. So here we have Mentimeter, which for those of you who like to use QR codes can do that and take part in online polls. But for those of you who are watching online, please use this system to engage and ask questions. And if you are watching it later, please do the same as well. We want to hear from as many of you as possible. So we've asked a simple question to start off with. How many have been to the forum before? Seems like quite a lot, but perhaps some of you haven't filled in the QR code, and that would be more relevant to people watching at home. So I'll pause for a minute if you do want to look at that QR code. See? Excellent. So these are the people who are here up on the stage, and you'll be hearing for that I introduced. And now I'm going to hand over to Kira Vivian Robinson, who is going to get on with the main part of the presentation.
Right, well, good evening. Thank you very much for coming, and it's wonderful to see so many people here and showing such an interest in Transform Leatherhead. And this is really a very exciting year that will be coming forward with so many different things happening. So it will be really rewarding, hopefully, for me to be able to sort of say where we have got to, and then also for some of the other presenters this evening to say where we're hoping to go. But just as a very brief recap, because I'm sure that most people who are here are very aware of the master plan for Transform Leatherhead. So this was a strategy that was prepared by Mole Valley District Council using a number of different teams, and it was shaped by 2 rounds of consultation in 2015 and 2016 to try to identify what the issues were and also the opportunities that we had in Leatherhead to make a real difference. The feedback from those consultations was very supportive, with about 75% of residents saying that they believed that the master plan was agreeing with the vision and the objectives that were set out. And there was then a 3rd round of consultation that took place in April and May 2016, which again was overwhelmingly in favour. So the purpose of the master plan was to try to engender community support for the transformation, to enable a robust and commercially viable proposal that would come forward so that we could get the relevant investors into the area, to enhance Leatherhead from the social and economic perspectives, to support proposals for the environmental and transport improvements, and also the master plan was there as the basis for us going forward and finding a partner to work with. So it took a holistic approach to the town and split it into a number of different quarters, as you can see. So we have the urban quarter, which is broadly the area that we're in at the moment, the retail leisure quarter, which is the main sort of town centre with the Swan Centre and Bull Hill, the Riverside quarter, and that links into the sports and leisure area. And some of the work, as you'll be aware, has already been done in terms of the urban quarter. We had works done outside the theatre to improve the public realm in that area. And obviously what we're now talking about is moving on to the retail leisure quarter and also to the Riverside. So the vision really shows how all of these different elements of it draw together in order to create one vision for Leatherhead. So each project has its own different elements. So the Riverside Quarter includes the redevelopment of Clare House and James House, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Also about the Riverside and flood alleviation. The flood alleviation, hopefully residents will know, well, I'm sure you do know, we do have flooding from the river, and over a number of years the Environment Agency has been involved with residents who are most affected by that to look at how their properties can be protected from flooding. You then have the retail leisure quarter, looking at Church Street, the Swan Centre, the town centre and public realm, and then the urban quarters, and again talking about transport and the parking studies, the sustainable transport, and the Red House and Bull Hill. And all of those different things come together in different ways, looking at how do we make the town more prosperous, more successful, because I think there needs to be a recognition that the old style of a town centre where people just go for shopping is no longer sufficient to bring people into town. So you really have to look at how do you incorporate leisure, how do you incorporate food and beverage, how do you incorporate sporting activities to make sure that the town centre is as vibrant and as lively as possible. And so by bringing all of those things together, you then are able to increase footfall, boost the economy, and improve the retail opportunities for everybody. So the vision that was articulated by the master plan, I will sort of just briefly go into these before I start handing over to some of the experts here this evening, was to make sure that Leatherhead Town Centre would be reinvented, expanded and transformed to make it a distinctive, enterprising and highly regarded market town, that we wanted it to have people-friendly streets and spaces, that it would link the Riverside, the railway station, the business and the residential areas into the heart of the town centre, because by having more people in the heart of the town centre, it supports the businesses as well. The town centre would be highly accessible by all forms of transport, and we wanted to make sure that there was a wider range of shops with new housing, leisure opportunities and community facilities, making Leatherhead a better place. So just before we go on to the next thing, this is the first of our polls for the evening. So we wanted you to just sort of take a minute, if you're able to, in one word, what do you love most about Leatherhead? So what I have to try and do now, as far as I can tell, is go on to the next one and finding the thing. Is that right? There we go. So it's validating, and hopefully you will then be able to start putting your responses in. If you scan the QR code. Responsible. Yep. Waiting for responses. We'll see if the technology works. See if that works. Is it not working? Yep. There we go. Right, so we'll just pause a little bit. and I will look forward to seeing what you have to say. That's brilliant. Can I ask Julie, is this the same as if people use the same word, it stays bigger in the... Right, so wonderful, isn't it? Community, one of the biggest ones that we have there, the river countryside. So we could probably be here all evening. I won't leave it too long, but yeah, really interesting. Hopefully people find that interesting to see. Right, I'm told we can publish it afterwards, so we'll do that. So what I will do now is thank you for taking part in that. I'm going to move on because we could be here all evening otherwise. Now it's not moving on. There we go. Right. Okay, so thank you very much for taking part in that. I think you'll have the opportunity to ask other questions. So I'm delighted now to welcome Katja, as Bridget mentioned earlier. So she's going to talk to you a little bit about sort of the town centres and visions for sort of towns. She's from TP Bennett, who is the lead architect for Transform Leatherhead and for the joint venture. And so we're delighted to have you here this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for, as has been said, enduring the weather to be here tonight. My name is Katia Polidoro. I'm a Principal Director at TP Bennett, where I lead the Town Centre Regeneration team and the design team that will be working with you to collectively, hopefully, deliver our collective vision for Leatherhead. A lot of consultation has been taken place already, but we are here to hear from you and incorporate all those wonderful ideas you already share with us in the design going forward. I don't need to tell you about your town and the incredible deep history that has a reference to literature, to modern history, as well as dear to us architects, the wonderful urban grain and buildings and historical buildings, as well as the natural beauty and the new attraction. What we are here to talk about is the fact that whatever we do, we want it to be uniquely Leatherhead. And that's why you are an integral part of this conversation. For tonight, I will share with you the initial thought that we have been sharing together, and you know, how we could move the development forward. I will go through some of the most interesting trends, a direction that our town centers are taking, and these examples, we believe we could be relevant to Leatherhead, but again, is a first step to share with you and see how we can move forward together. Most of these direction and trends I will share with you have been accelerated by COVID, but we believe they are here to stay and shape the towns of the future. Starting from the past, in the past decades, one of the major changes that our towns have encountered is the transition from use segregation to mixed use. In simple words, from towns and cities where the uses were just segregated to certain area, the living, the working, the leisure, to mixed use, where ideally all the uses that we need emotionally and physically as a human being are reachable in 15-20 minutes radius by walking, by bike, and preferring a clean mean of transport, but not necessarily excluding cars. And one of the example, not necessarily always positive, of these past segregation of uses is definitely the arrival in the 70s of shopping centers that have landed in our town center, disconnecting community, disconnecting physically areas in the town center. These are the examples that are probably familiar to you, from Lucian to Luton to Hamel and to Leatherhead. And the fact that, they were intended as a bubble where you could only shop, and in some cases, as they evolved slightly, shop and for leisure. Now, moving forward, we believe there is a great opportunity in the shopping center as it is, and the way to bring it back to life is to make sure that they integrate it with the town center. They offer uses that are for the local community. It's not a cookie-cutter approach, as probably was until a couple of decades ago, and they respond to the need that you would like to see in your town center, and together working organically with whatever else is going on around, so all the other development that will take place on other sites. Interestingly, all the change that I'm going to share with you actually were already there a few years ago, but actually they've been accelerated, as I said, by COVID. One of which, one of the most obvious, is the importance of well-being and access to open and healthy spaces that most of the time, translates into access to green spaces. And this is for community access as well as private access. We talk a lot about sustainability. You heard the buzzword over and over again, and the urgency of changing the way we live and the way we build. And we are, thanks goodness, I would say, increasingly aware of the impact each development has on people's quality of life. What we call social values that I believe, we're going to touch further later. These are some of the examples, from the most obvious one that people are familiar in London to some more niche and boutique, like the MS Square in Ireland or the Scheme in Berlin. Interestingly, this example, especially the one in Ireland, has been part of a series of regeneration of the existing historical town center, and the consistency and the quality of the regeneration has been secured by the fact that a town architect was in place, as in the JV usually there is a wider group of stakeholders that look after the consistency of the quality of the development. This need for quality of life and access to open spaces has been shaping the way we design, as a designer, our master plan. The master plan is the big plan that usually take care of a large area, that not just one building. And landscape-led master plan, a master plan that think about the space, and not by buildings, but by the sequence of spaces that you encounter. What do I mean by that? Which square do you want to see? Which green space do you want to access? Which street do you want to walk into? We start with those, and then we build the building around it, to shape it. So this means that whatever we do, the important part of the new development and the existing development is always the space that most people live in. So this will be at the heart of the way we will approach, in our case, the two sites, both Bull Hill and the Swan Center, and we will make sure that there will be continuity and connectivity between them and the surrounding areas, so that we think is fundamental for the success and the longevity of the scheme. Localism is one of the trends that have been definitely encouraged by COVID. Obviously, why is that? Because people were stuck at home. Eventually, that trend is here to stay, where we are embracing a mixed way of working. So people not always traveling to the main city center. Some of the week stay at home. Inevitably, they use more local businesses, local facilities. And this actually had a good effect on a quite in trouble high streets. So we have seen the resurgence of localism, so the resurgence of high street and a resurgence of local economy that has helped what struggle to come back to life. These are some of the examples. Altrincham, was quite successful already before COVID, but basically everything restarted. The regeneration of this town center restarted by simply a food market and enhancement of the quality of the landscape around it. The Eben Bridge development, again, everything restarted around a market and a town hall that became a hub for startups. So for local businesses that started to have a platform, and then they developed into local shop, feeding that element of local offer together with the more national brand. And Eltham also, High Street is quite interesting because there was a really careful intervention on the quality of the high street, reference to the historical presence. So it was a really careful way to relook at the local offer. At the heart of this kind of successful redevelopment or new development is always a mixed use. We talked about it earlier. Is a way to have everything you need on your doorstep and to basically make a space vibrant and successful. Some of these examples are really very, very small. They all operate around one coffee shop and one little new shop, but it's always the quality of the architecture, of the landscape that makes a difference. Some are in central London. You would argue that is easier, but actually we're quite derelict streets. And others are abroad, where within one building there are more than one use that respond to different kind of need. Some are our, some of our development. An office can be an office, but this specifically one that we did in Manchester as a very good, very high sustainability credentials. So is a building that reuse a lot of the material, but also has the top floor that is constantly used by local community, while the rest of the building is used by, the everyday workers. All these uses usually are grounded by a focal place, is what we call the piazza, the square, is what makes a place your home, because it's where human interaction happen. Egham is nearby. You are familiar with that. Fillmore Keeling is one of the schemes we have completed. There were apartments, there was a cinema, there were restaurants and shops, and they were really all wedged in 3 different what they're called conservation areas. So historical area with the listed buildings. So we had to be really careful how we, look and related to all these existing buildings. The Ram Quarter is quite interesting. In Wandsworth, it all was regenerated around an old brewery, and there are really lovely squares that characterize all different parts of the development that is mainly residential. Multi-use is another interesting trend in our town centers. Is different from mixed use. What it is the use of the building for different uses during the day. And this is one of the most sustainable things we can do for our buildings, because we basically make sure that they are used 24/7. They're not just used as an office, they're not just used as a community center, they're not just used as a nursery, but there are different uses during the day. Cambridge and the one in Germany, please don't let me pronounce that, is actually a nursery and a community center. The local in the Netherlands is a library and a workplace and a community center as a place for startup. And then there is a Paisley library in Scotland that is actually in an existing building, and you have plenty of this beautiful one in Leatherhead, and is again a community center and a nursery. Multi-generational is where we were. So is like used to be. A sustainable society and a fair society is a society where everybody is welcome and everybody is looked after and include different age groups. Some of these examples are really relevant. The Marmalade Lane in Cambridge is a beautiful development that basically was designed by the inhabitants, and there are a lot of these open courtyard that you might recollect from a vernacular past, but they work perfectly well in looking after each other, in safety, and in open spaces. Others are a bit more avant-garde, like the one in Netherlands, where within one building there are different generations depending on the size of the apartment. But we are increasingly looking also at different kind of things, like the one in Birmingham you see up there, the Garrison Circus, is a series of buildings, some of which existing, other new, that have a series of offer, some for students, some for residential, some for co-living. And co-living very often is a typology, is a type of residential that very often has been associated with soon after student life or young people. Is it not? In London, where 20% of the population live on their own, actually, and in other town centers, much smaller than that, is used to enable people that don't want to live on their own to live in a small community and to share the facilities and to share the communal spaces. That is something we needed to really consider. All these things are, all this trend, this direction, are only possible if we can, and are only successful, a lot of these squares, these spaces that we all love to live in, if there is enough, densification that allow enough people to live on the premises, to create a footfall, to create a need for local businesses, and to make the space attractive for people living here and people traveling here, so it become a way of attracting also visitors and travelers. These are, small and big kind of development. Some are in Paris, some are in central London. Some smaller are, out of London, but, they're all characterized by the fact that they are near transport hub, that Leatherhead is, and allow to create what we call critical mass, where infrastructure are already in place. So avoiding green belt, that is something where we should all do. So where infrastructure is present, where development is already there, and where it is easier to create the right amount, a vibrant amount of uses and people that will make the development successful. So we are here to create with you a sustainable, inclusive, resilient, and connected Leatherhead. We wanted to create a new hub where to live, shop, work, so with a heart at the center, with a rival place that tells people what is Leatherhead about. We wanted to, with you, put Leatherhead on the map, as a destination, but mainly as a place to be proud of. And my question to you is, are you on board? Please come and let us know.
Oh, yes, now it is. Thank you. Thank you very much, Katja. That was really interesting to see some of the themes that are sort of going on in the development of sort of towns and architecture, and how you're going to be applying some of those to looking at this joint venture. So I'm very briefly now going to, or not very briefly, but I'm delighted now to hand over to some of the representatives that we have from Kier with us this evening. So as Bridget explained at the outset, the sort of the joint venture is the joint venture between Mole Valley District Council and Kier. And the purpose of that is to look at the regeneration of the Bull Hill and Swan Centre sites. And so signing that agreement with Kier last year was one of the key milestones for Transform Leatherhead. So tonight we have Lee Thomas, who is the Managing Director, who's going to come and talk to us about it, and also Alex Conway, who is, I think, the Development Director, something like that. Sorry if I haven't got the title right, but she's also going to sort of come and talk. So if I can now please hand over to Lee, I think, or is it Alex first? Both. There we go. There we go. Thank you. I'll do that bit.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. We're genuinely delighted to start this journey with you. At the start of any journey, it's really important to set out really what the purpose is. You've got two entities coming together as a joint venture to try and do a big part of an element of Transform Leatherhead. So the purpose that we set out together, we sat down and we said, what's really important? What are we trying to achieve? It's sort of fundamental, really, for us to actually set out our stall in terms of what we're doing. And this purpose really reflects the purpose of the Transform Leatherhead statement that you saw earlier from Kira. It's to create a well-connected, sustainable community. We've heard a lot about community already today, actually. Your words came up as one of the strongest words that we actually saw coming from the participation. Katja talked a lot about community. So it's really creating that community within the town centre that attracts people of all ages and actually creates that really exciting place to live, work and dwell. And I think one of the challenges that high streets have had over a number of years now is that actually people aren't spending enough time in them. And actually, when the mix is wrong and you don't get the footfall in the town centre, actually businesses don't want to locate there. You know, rents, rates, service charges, all these things are commercially really quite expensive. And actually, local businesses need to want to come to the town centre. So as part of our challenge, in terms of the mix of uses that we put together, is to create that really great balance of people who want to live in the town centre, reasons for them to stay there, some really great public open spaces, some really great ideas in terms of restaurants, coffee shops, leisure areas. So actually the dwell time in the town centre stays, and that creates more viability for local businesses. They then want to locate in the town centre, and it's this self-fulfilling prophecy that you then get a vibrant town centre working again. So sitting down, the purpose is why you do it. Development objectives is really about what are the main principles you're going to stick to. So we've got 7 main principles here, and they seem a bit out there, sort of very high level, but they're actually quite important. The first one is deliver a flexible, viable, sustainable, and market-facing master plan. What do we mean when we say all those things? Well, viability is really important. The scheme needs to work commercially to actually generate all of the things like affordable housing, public open space, infrastructure spend. And it's just one of the things that we have to do in terms of the balance of the conversation that we have in terms of what does this master plan look like. It needs to be market facing. We need to listen to you. We need to listen to other occupiers. We need to listen to other businesses about what do they want and need for the town centre for them to come in and create jobs and actually attract people into the town centre, which is a really big, important part of what makes a vibrant town centre. It's to generate revenue from Mole Valley and capital receipts. There's a lot of services that the council need to pay for, and actually part of this is really about how do we actually create that sustainable model for local authorities to actually pay for all the services, invest in roads, invest in infrastructure, invest in schools. And part of this joint venture and part of the design of what we're going to do needs to make sure that there's some returns back to actually ensure that that's reinvested back into the local communities. We've mentioned generate employment to drive economic growth. It's a really key important part. There's no point in building a lot of residential within the town centre so people just actually buy a flat or buy a house and then get on the train and go and work somewhere else. That doesn't work for sustainable communities. What you want is actually people to actually dwell in the town centre. So creating this employment, but also creating residential that satisfies sort of multi-generational living, actually, is what we call at the moment. So you're getting demand from all parts of the day, and you're driving that footfall. We've mentioned housing. The important part in that statement there is the brownfield. We're not going into the green belt. We're utilising land. The public open space that we are going to build on partly, we will replace. So I think on a sort of like-for-like basis, we will ensure that there's as much open space as there is currently. But it's not just about quantum, it's also about quality as well. So improving the quality of that space and making sure that you don't actually reduce the areas that actually people use. Improve the connectivity. You saw from the Transform Leatherhead sort of master plan, there's sort of 3 main areas. And actually how people interact between those areas, the station, the urban quarter, the commercial quarter, the retail and leisure, the town centre, down to the river, again, is a really important part about how you bring communities together. Community is people coming together with a common purpose. So actually, whatever we do as part of Bull Hill and Swan Centre needs to make sure that connectivity is there. Improve the visitor experience of the Swan Centre. We know from talking already to existing shop owners and businesses that are actually in the Swan Centre is that they like being there. Part of the problem is the uncertainty of what's happening around the town is actually causing them some challenges. So as we actually look and create this master plan and sell the vision for what we want to do and listen to all the feedback, a lot of it is around what we're going to do and how do we encourage inward investment from other businesses into the town centre. Part of that is improving car parking. We're doing surveys at the moment to understand what the demand is for car parking. how do you utilise that space better? So all of these things we will do as part of the master plan. And lastly, but probably one of the most biggest parts really, is delivering social value for the existing community. As a public listed company, it's a really important part of what our shareholders require us to do. It is about actually giving back into the community. It is about making sure that when we are engaging with companies, we engage with local companies to make sure that that inward investment actually recycles the economic benefits of what we do on this scheme into the local economies. It is about investing into the communities. It is about making sure that actually this becomes a really significant community benefit scheme as well. So we sat down, and those are the sort of 7 main principles that we've all agreed to abide by over the next 5 to 10 years on this regeneration journey.
So the first phase of the development is pre-planning, and as part of that we will be looking to do some public consultation with yourselves. So the public consultation runs over a 6-month period starting today. It's split into 2 phases, as you can see on the screen. The first phase is effectively a listening period where we will be meeting with community groups, commerce and business representatives, youth forums and political stakeholders to better understand your aspirations for the development. We're really looking to engage with as diverse a group of people as possible. During this phase, we will be commencing a number of pre-planning application meetings with the local planning authority at Mole Valley, and we will also be engaging with local schools across different age groups to raise awareness of the project and also gain feedback on their ideas for the scheme too. So phase 2 is a launch of our formal public consultation phase, which will run from mid-May until early July. This phase will consist of a mix of in-person events and online webinars where members of the public can find out more about the evolving proposals and master plan, and we'll also have the opportunity to meet the wider design and development team. We will be distributing information about these events to the public via letter drops, social and other forms of media, updates on the Transform Leatherhead website, and directly to the harder to reach groups. So you can see on the screen on the left-hand side that we've now launched an update to the Bull Hill and Swan Centre section on the Transform Leatherhead website. We will use this as a way to communicate updates and forthcoming consultation events with yourselves. This page also contains details on how you can communicate with us during this pre-planning phase. The email address and phone number on the right-hand side are currently live and being managed by our communications consultants between 9 and 5 during the week. So please do get in touch with us, and we hope to see you at our first public consultation events from mid-May. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Lee and Alex, for coming, and I know that everyone is going to be looking forward to sort of how the plans evolve and having their say in terms of what comes next. Just to sort of move on from that, obviously a large part of Transform Leatherhead is the Swan Centre and Bull Hill, but as I explained at the outset, Transform Leatherhead is about more than just Bull Hill and Swan Centre, and so just very briefly recapping on some of the other areas where we've been working over the last number of years. So Clare House and James House, hopefully everyone knows, is down on the riverside. It's a property that was purchased by the council a number of years ago, largely speaking to try to prevent it from becoming a very mediocre permitted development of office conversions, and with the aim of making sure that we were able to develop it in the way that we wanted to develop it and make it a real gateway into the town centre, so connecting the river into the town centre and encouraging people to sort of move between those two areas. So Mole Valley District Council obtained planning permission for a redevelopment of the two sites, which was for 35 flats with community space and a ground floor cafe on the ground floor, and then public realm improvements, and also keeping the car parking to the same level as we currently have. We then went out over a period of time to identify developers to actually build the development. And you may recall we had a developer in 2019. Unfortunately, there was then the uncertainty of elections and Brexit, and that developer pulled out. We then had COVID, and so we were advised to pause the remarketing of it during COVID. We then obtained another partner, and unfortunately, with general construction inflation and costs, they were no longer able to proceed. So at the end of last year, we managed to find a third partner, and we are currently in the process of finalising the legal documents with them in order to enable them to start the work on the proposal. In the meantime, we haven't been just sort of sitting back and waiting, and in order to make the proposal or make the scheme a more viable scheme for our development partner, the council successfully bidded for the Brownfield Land Release Fund and was awarded the sum of £560,000 towards, which goes towards, as it says there, unlocking stalled sites. So it helps towards the demolition costs to make sure that these schemes become financially viable. So that funding has been awarded, but the grant requires that we are in a demolition contract by the end of March. So that is all sort of in process, and the works will take place to demolish the site around, subject to planning, around September. And there are various applications going into the council at the moment to vary the existing planning application to enable that to take place. It is likely that the new partner the new developer may wish to put in a different planning application, and so it's envisaged that those demolition and the new planning application will follow very shortly afterwards. So hopefully that sort of gives you an update on where we are with Clare House and James House. So moving on to the Riverside, and again, linking very closely to Clare House and James House. Again, we've recently appointed the landscape architects Alan Scott. They were appointed in the autumn of 2022 following a procurement process. And they carried out a wide range of technical surveys and engagement with the Environment Agency in relation to the flooding risks that I alluded to earlier with the flood alleviation. So we want to make sure that whatever we do with the Riverside does not make any flooding issues worse. After they had been appointed, they carried out a number of stakeholder engagement meetings. So some of the people here I know attended those. So some of them were with sort of the residents' associations, with the Environment Agency, with the River Mole Group, various other organisations, and also with the councillors. And that sort of all took place in spring 2023. One of the key things that came out of that is that prior to that period of engagement, we had been calling it the Riverside Park. And there was a very big sort of move to say that we didn't want it to be a Riverside Park. We didn't want brightly coloured plastic sort of children's sort of entertainment there. We wanted to embrace the natural element of the river. And so we are now calling it the Riverside rather than the Riverside Park. So following those sort of stakeholder engagements, we've then had further work carried out by the landscape architects, and they have come up with the Riverside concepts. And hopefully, again, some of you will have been able to participate in the consultation which took place, where we went through, or they sort of had the drawings up and options as to what people might like to do. And so some of them sort of involved enhancing the Riverside edge, improving footpath connection, improving mansion gardens, restoring the riverbanks, creating natural play areas, and the word there, natural, not plastic, hopefully, And one of the sort of the Marmite options was creating a new pedestrian bridge which goes from one side of the river over to the other. I think that is number 6 on the concept master plan. I say Marmite because some people loved that idea and other people absolutely hated it. So thank you very much to everybody who took part in that consultation. Just for sort of some very quick feedback, the top 5 concept ideas were the development of a natural play area, enhancing the riverbank edge close to Clare House and James House, and that ties in very neatly with the redevelopment of Clare House and James House, managing the islands for wildlife, improving mansion gardens, and as I say, the creation of a pedestrian bridge. So just to sort of reiterate sort of, how that consultation took place, it ran from September through to the end of October. We had plans up in the Swan Centre, over at the library, at the Leatherhead Leisure Centre, and online. We had 2 drop-in centres where we had about 260 people drop in and sort of put their stickers on the bits that they felt sort of they felt most passionately about. And we had an online questionnaire which had over 140 responses. So clearly it's an area that people feel very strongly about and is very has been sort of very welcomed. As I mentioned, the new pedestrian bridge, it would be, if it was created, a very distinctive landmark and an accessible way to access from one side of the town into the leisure centre and into the other. But it is a very high-cost intervention with a lot of technical design constraints. And again, we reiterate that very much the sort of the Marmite option in terms of where we got. So we will have to think very carefully about what happens with the pedestrian bridge. So moving on to sustainable transport, and as Katja mentioned, a lot of sort of new design sort of concepts and town planning is all about how we are able to move within the town without needing to use our cars and be a little bit more sustainable. And so this is just really to highlight some of the things that we've done recently to try to encourage that. So we've had the off-street car parking, electric vehicle points put in at various points. So those have been funded from the Getting Building Fund. Hopefully everyone here is familiar with the Mole Valley Connect digital demand response transport. That was a sort of a joint project set up between Mole Valley and Surrey County Council, and initially we were just rolling it out in the sort of the north of the district in Leatherhead, but it's been so popular and so successful that we have now been able to roll it out, and it serves the whole of Mole Valley and nearby destinations. And we have 4 electric buses which are sort of run sort of that particular service. Another point which I think again is sort of still in development but will become more and more important for Transform Leatherhead is the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, otherwise known as an LSWIP, for anyone who's heard that but didn't know what it means. So what that is a series of assessments that were carried out. It's a plan that's run by Surrey County Council, but it's looking at cycling and walking locations and routes within the whole of the district, and then trying to identify where improvements can be made and focusing in on the ones that are the sort of seen to be the most important. So we have completed stage 1 of those. We worked with Atkins, who did those initial surveys and have put forward those initial proposals. And we have now got to the stage where we have agreed funding for the second stage of feasibility studies. And two of the routes are particularly relevant for Leatherhead because they look at the high street as a walking zone, and also the route between the town centre and down to the train, and then onwards into North Leatherhead. So particularly important in terms of making that connectivity between the town centre and enabling us to sort of get into other areas. We anticipate that those next feasibility studies will take about 12 months to complete. And at that stage, when we have those feasibility studies, it will enable us to bid for funding from the government for larger scale infrastructure investment in terms of cycling and walking. So really you have to have the feasibility studies before you can bid for government funds. That's the way that it works these days. So again, just very quickly on accessible Leatherhead, because I know that we want to make sure there's plenty of time for questions. There are a couple of interventions that have taken place in order to try to make Leatherhead more accessible. We have the Access for All at Leatherhead Station, where we're in the process of getting started with the improvement works to install new lifts and a footbridge and to improve the lighting and the CCTV. And the whole aim of that process is to make sure that it is step-free access to the train station. That is costing about £6.2 million, obviously funded by Network Rail. And then we have the Changing Places toilet in the Swan Centre, where the work is very nearly finished. That has been funded by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and as I say, is almost finished bar the snagging. So the target completion is the end of March. So moving on to the high street and public realm, and I mentioned earlier about the LSWIP and how having these feasibility studies, and one of the core ones is the core walking zone, which encompasses the high street. Having those feasibility studies will enable us to make sort of bids for funding. I think it's helpful, hopefully, to sort of go back a step, really. We're talking here about the future, but it's important to have the context of what has happened in the past. And in 2019, there was a study, and I'm sure, again, a lot of you will have been involved in those consultations, because even at that stage, there was a recognition that in town centres, there was more of a drive towards pedestrianisation. But equally, it was recognised that in Leatherhead, it was a pretty contentious issue as to whether the high street should be pedestrianised or whether it should still remain open to cars. So that Arcadis Public Realm Improvement Study took place, and it came up with a number of sort of options, which were then presented to the local committee in 2019, where it did broadly look at pedestrianising the high street, but leaving various areas open for parking later in the evening and also for deliveries. There was a number of grant applications made to try to get the funding to actually implement those changes at a later stage, but they were not successful. And what then happened is we had COVID. And so hopefully, again, people will remember that when COVID happened, the government was encouraging people to go out into the fresh air, to use cafes, but out on the streets. And there was all of the active travel sort of funding that came in, which was designed to enable people to be out in the streets, but in a safer way. If you are having a street which is being used by pedestrians, if there are cafes and restaurants and they have people seated outside, but you equally have cars driving up and down, then as a highway safety feature, you have to have a separation. And so we were given, I won't say foisted, we were given the planters that came from Surrey County Council sort of initially, that were made out of the old pallets, and hopefully everyone remembers what they looked like. Obviously, they deteriorated over a period of time and were falling to pieces. And because we hadn't anticipated having them, we didn't have a budget to maintain them or to plant them. But given the changing use of the high street, with people using the restaurants more outside, using the cafes more outside, the sort of the mood of businesses on the high street changed, and there was an indication that they wanted to be able to continue to use that outdoor space. And so we decided that it was necessary to replace the planters that were deteriorating with some new ones. And so what is currently on the high street are the new planters. I think, I'll be quite frank, we didn't expect the quantity to be quite as overwhelming as they are. So, I'll be very open about that. But hopefully everybody has heard that we are moving 15 of them. They are going to be relocated into the Swan Centre initially, and that should happen next week, as I understand it. And then they are being planted up as soon as they have been moved. So what we have here is an illustration, I think, created by Kathy Brett, as to what they will look like once they are done. And at that point, I'm sure that people will start to appreciate them a little more than they currently do. I recognise that they've been a very difficult subject for everybody. But yes, so we do still need to identify further funding to progress the public realm improvements. And one of the things that I hope will help with that is that we have this partnership with Surrey County Council, where they have identified Leatherhead as one of the towns that they now want to work with in terms of sort of encouraging funding. And they will hopefully enable us to find other sources of funding as well to make some further public realm improvements in the High Street. So I think at this point I hand over to Bridget, who will talk about some of the more financial elements, given that that's her expertise as well.
Okay, thank you, Kira. 2021 doesn't seem that long ago in context of what we've been talking about tonight, but can anybody tell me how many banks we had in Leatherhead in 2021? Five. We had 5. Barclays, Santander, Lloyds, NatWest and HSBC. Yeah. And I'm sure you all know that today we have Nationwide and we have the Post Office. But if you also think about Dorking and Cobham, they've had the same story. It isn't just Leatherhead, it's happening across the country. And one thing that we found is that we've been trying to set up what's called a banking hub, where you have a facility where each bank comes in for a day and offers services. And as they've exited high streets en masse, you would think it would be a bit easier to get one. So we have been working for 18 months to try and get a banking hub here in Leatherhead, which I think is an ideal location, given that Dorking and Cobham haven't had them, and that we know from the community how much support there is out there for it. From the Chamber of Commerce, from the Leatherhead Residents Association, to Hilary Porter going and getting petitions filled in. It was very clear that the community was supported the Banking Hub initiative. But despite all the efforts in the petitions, it was turned down. Why was it turned down? Because Nationwide are considered a bank of last resort. Actually, them having there and them committing to the high street is a reason not to have a banking hub. I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of Nationwide's executives, but they've now pulled out of that scheme, probably because, well, they're the last bank of last resort in too many places. So we have been working with Link, who are the organisation who work on access to cash, because it's also, those banks have gone, we have one cash point. So access to cash is really important, because even though it's from 2021 we lost 5 banks, I'm sure, I don't believe, that the way that we behave in banking has changed like that overnight. So that need is still there. If we think to how the Leatherhead Community Hub have got behind supporting the Post Office campaign in the north of Leatherhead, that speaks to people's wanting access to cash. So for 18 months we've been working on this. I met the representatives of Link in January, and we encouraged another consultation to be filled in to support access to cash. And with Nationwide moving out, and there are some changes to what banks need to do now if they are considering withdrawing. The government or anybody can't stop them withdrawing, it is a commercial decision, but they have to take now more assessments in, is there access to cash? How close is it? Are there going to be reasonable other services? There's a consultation on those changes happening. That's actually finished now. And again, thank you to all the organisations who helped us publish it, promote it, and put in our representations. And in October, maybe September, we'll be finding out the results of that, and we will be first in the queue to put in our request for a banking hub under the new criteria. That's something we are committed to doing. And who knows, maybe in Epsom they won't have any by that time either. You never know. So that for me is something that, I'm keeping a very, very close eye on. There's another initiative called Business Improvement District. So what's that? There is one in Dorking, there's one in Cobham, there's one in various places around the country. And this is where shops on the high street, but equally gyms, equally nurseries, businesses, some of the businesses potentially in the industrial site in the Mole, they can actually work together. They do have to agree themselves. This is the businesses wanting to do this. This is not something the council can enforce. We can support. But if they want to, they can get together and they will have a referendum to do so. And they can say, yes, we want to be part of it. And then they pay a levy on top of their business rates. And that goes into marketing, support, a town centre manager, and to really then enables them as a group to access additional grant funding. So we've been set up a feasibility group with some of the local businesses. They've been working on what they think they might want to do, and that's coming forward to council for us to support. In the same way we supported Dorking, we gave them some loan funds to help them set up, get personnel. If that's what local businesses want to do, we will support it in the same way as Dorking and support a referendum. But it's one way that in areas that that businesses can work together, and if the businesses want to do that, we will help. And they may come back and say, no, I don't know. That's for the local businesses to decide. And I just wanted to, something that I'm sure any of my fellow ward members up there will equally know about this. This is a beautiful Art Deco building on the High Street in a conservation area, or it should be. It should be. We know it's been vacant for some time. We know the owners have planning permission, which is you can get, is a government thing. Once something's been left open for 3 years, you can get planning permission to turn it into residential. But it's been, I don't know if it's appropriate to call it land banked, it's been left empty, potentially so that cost of construction goes down or the land value goes up, or seeing what happens in Transform Leatherhead and maybe not wanting to turn it to residential. I can't speak for the landlords. But what is really upsetting is the state it's being left to get into, with boardings come down. And as I say, I'm sure any local councillor over the last 10 years will have been dealing with casework on that. So what we have done, I'm sharing, and it's something that isn't being done lightly, is that we've actually taken legal action. So we do have powers to against dilapidation, fly posting, where they're not taking care of their building. So normally you go to a landlord and you go, this is terrible, can you sort it out please, otherwise we'll take action, and they do it, generally. But in this case they haven't. So we have taken them to court for non-compliance. We've gone through all the relevant notices, and a hearing is scheduled for next week. So, and I think what I'm trying to say here is we don't take taking these powers very lightly. You want to engage and work with your landowners. But we have to take seriously what we want our high street to look like as we can within what we legally can. So we will be using these powers if we see fit, and that is exactly what we're doing. And I hopefully look forward to sharing the update on that following the court hearing. So that's quickly for me, and now I'm going back to Kira.
Thank you, Bridget. So almost at the end of the presentation part, so we've got plenty of time for questions. So really just wanting to talk about Transform Leatherhead and how it sort of relates to Leatherhead as a whole, because we all know that Leatherhead is more than just the town centre. And obviously, the sort of investment in the town needs to pay dividends to everybody. So really just talking about some of the other things that sort of help to support the town more generally. So obviously the Leatherhead Community Hub, hopefully everyone here has been down to the Leatherhead Community Hub. I'm always amazed actually that I still meet people who don't know that it's there. And I say, go there and see it, because it's fantastic. And it says there it continues to go from strength to strength. I think it's 2 and a bit years that it's been open now, and it is bursting at the seams. It definitely needs more space, and we're sort of trying to look at other things that we can do to try to sort of work that through. But that's one of the things. So the hub there has its cafe, it has the well-being the well-being garden at the back, it has an advice cafe that is run every week, where you have sort of qualified people to help with benefits. It has classes, it has the sort of the arts side of things. Obviously it has the nursery at the front, which is the fantastic nursery. So really a key point in North Leatherhead. One of the things that we were really pleased to be able to do was to find the funding for a community development worker. Again, there was a listening project which took place a number of years, and one of the key things that came out of that was that there was a feeling that there needed to be a community development worker, and that is Carly, and she is working now to try to make sure that it is the community that drives these things, not the council telling you what to do. So it's, she has been spending time speaking to different people, different groups, and finding out what do residents want for their community, how can they generate the energy and the enthusiasm to get things done. And one of the immediate things that has come out of that is the campaign to secure the Kingston Road Post Office. So that is a community-led campaign. It's been sort of started up by one of the ladies who was working in the cafe, and she has done a fantastic job to really generate that buzz about that facility and make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to preserve it. So another thing that's, again, really important is the Mole Valley Employment and Skills Hub, which has been based in the Swan Centre for a number of years. So opened in spring 2021 in conjunction with Surrey Lifelong Learning Partnership. We get regular reports back to Council with stories of people who have been helped by the hub, where they have sort of struggled to find employment or they haven't been able to get training. And some of the stories are really fantastic as to what those the people working in the hub have been able to achieve with them. In 2024-25, we've got funding for a specialised youth employment and skills officer. So, aiming at the people who might not have been able to do terribly well at school. Maybe they've struggled with COVID and things haven't gone terribly well for them. So, really trying to focus in on them. And as I say, they're sort of plug for the next jobs fair at on the 21st of March. From 10 till 12. The other thing, again, is a plug here, is for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. This has been a project that has been sort of taken place over the last couple of years, where the council has allocated grants to various community groups for different things that they want to do, and that programme is continuing. And I think, again, a plug for the different elements of it that are going on this year. So the community grants, the final and the third and final round of community grants closes this Sunday the 3rd. So if you are a community organisation and you want to try to increase volunteering or make changes to the town centre or enhance cultural assets or heritage offer or increase participation in community activities, and you've got an idea, I'm sure that you can put it together in a form in one day and get that application in. It's not difficult, and I've helped previously with other ones. So if you're worried, please get in touch. Another one, again, is a really important one, and something that people are always saying is, what businesses do we want in Leatherhead? How many times have I seen that? Well, we have a grant fund for businesses who want to start up, or people who want to start up businesses. So, whether it's an existing business or whether it's a start-up, it is open for bids. You can bid for between £1,000 to £15,000. It closes on the 5th of April. So if you have a yearning to start a new business and you've identified that unit on the high street, then please make your application. Similarly, there is a community garden programme, so funding which is available to establish new community gardens, and the deadline to register an interest for that is the 31st of March. And there is also funding which isn't under the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, but another source of funding is to improve community halls. I think that one is still open, yes. And that is to make community buildings more energy efficient. So if you are in a community building and you think that it would benefit from more insulation or heat pumps or something like that, then again, please look at that. So very quickly, just an example of some of the town centre events that we continue to support in the Swan Centre, trying to make sure that there is always something coming up, always something to bring people into the town, and obviously sort of working with the Stockroom Society, who run some fantastic workshops and a real variety of different things that are going on throughout the time. And I think a lot of people don't realise that these things are going on, but they are sort of running and doing very successfully. So, back to another live audience poll. So I'm going to try and get onto this. Is this I've got to do this one again. So, based on the ideas presented, what do you think is the greatest opportunity for Leatherhead? So let me try. And what have I gone too far? Let me go back. Go back one. Oh goodness. Okay, I can't find my, there it is. Onto that one. Trying to keep pressing. Is it coming up? Not yet. Keep going. No. We'll give it one more go, and if not, then we have got more time for questions. Yes, we can come back. Okay, so thank you very much for your patience in listening to us sort of witter on for quite a lot of time, but hopefully it was actually sort of giving you a little bit of background, but also sort of an idea as to what is coming in terms of Transform Leatherhead. We've got to try and make sure that we cover as many questions as we possibly can. We've got online questions that have been submitted during the presentation this evening. But if you have a question, we're going to try and sort of move around the room and then sort of pick people. And if you then just, as you say, wait and hopefully we'll get round to someone. So where do we start? Want to start down at the front here? There we go.
Hi, my name's Robert. I live in Leatherhead. I overlook the Ball Hill site. Mm-hmm. I own a property there. And in the master plan, my house has been identified as an active frontage for the project. Firstly, I just want to say this is a brilliant piece of work, and you should be commended on the amount of work you've done, the vision you've got, and over such a long period of time. So that's something to be sort of really proud of, and I'm really excited about what this can bring. My question's got two parts, and I'll keep it short so that everyone can ask as many questions. I think looking at what we've been presented today, there's a lot of concepts, but not a lot of analysis. And I'm just worried that it's very nebulous, it's very conceptual, but actually there isn't any financial analysis, any economic analysis, and no mention of environment, carbon impact. There's not much data on travel, transport. There's lots of nice graphics and designs, which are all great. And like I said, I do commend you on the work you've done. But I do think as residents and as taxpayers and people paying for this project, we are sort of owed from you more understanding about the impact you think this will have, because this is a big investment, and you've partnered with multiple private companies, all of which impact us as local residents. So that's my first question. My second question is around engagement. So this session's brilliant, but I recognise it hasn't happened for a long time. On the 15th of February, I was woken up at 6:45 by a Kia subcontractor piling in the car park. and I received an apology from Mole Valley Council, which I'm very grateful for, from Amber. And you know, I understand that this work is going on. Of course, I'm not. I understand that this scoping has to happen, but it's recognising that we do live here, and that the master plan is all we have to go on at the moment. But yet, you're completing piling work early in the morning. We had a traffic survey camera put outside of our kitchen window, which was completed to do the analysis on the use of the car park. Like I said, I support all of the work, but just remember that we're here and we need to be engaged with in a more constructive and proactive way. There's a difference between just having a forum and actually co-producing with residents. So I hope that's okay.
Okay. There you go.
Sorry. I'm not, but don't sound grumpy. I really like it. I just want to make sure we get it right.
No, thank you so much. That's really really good feedback. And obviously we're listening about sort of making sure that residents are not inconvenienced sort of, you know, in this process. I think in terms of I'm going to sort of share the questions out. I don't know, Lee, would you be the best one? I mean, what I could say in terms of the finances, there are actually very detailed documents if you go onto the website and if you go onto the council website where you have the papers where we have decided, you know, which partner we're going to go with and you know, what does the scheme offer. There are details in there, but it's not necessarily something that everybody sort of wants to look at. So for instance, we've just agreed the annual business plan. That has some figures in there, but not a huge amount, because at the moment this is the start of the process. But I think I might hand over a little bit more to Lee, because he's clearly going to be the expert in answering that.
No, thank you. First of all, can I apologise for the contractor operating so early in the morning? That really shouldn't happen. So we've spoken to them. I can only apologise to you. We are genuinely very sorry for that. Going forward, Kia Contractor and all the subcontractors we will use will be all considerate contractor affiliated, and engagement with the local, local residents and local businesses will be all part of what we do. And we will obviously try and mitigate any disruption as much as possible. There will be some, regeneration is like that, but we'll clearly try and mitigate that. So genuinely, we're really sorry for that incident. In terms of the viability and the sort of the nebulous nature of where we currently are, I think that's sort of reflecting that we're at the start of the process. We have a draft business plan between the joint venture that gives us an idea of what might work in terms of viability. But actually, until we actually test and hear the views and responses and what people want, and actually develop and evolve those things into a master plan with Katia and the firm and the other consultants, and then replay this back as part of stakeholder engagement, this thing will evolve and it will go through various iterations in terms of what's right. It is going to be a bit nebulous at this stage. It's the very nature of the process. It's quite iterative, actually, and we'll have to balance the needs of lots of conflicting type objectives with viability and with creating land value for the council that they can reinvest in the local economy. So we have a very clear structure of what will work financially, but actually how that's made up is really an output of where you get to in the master plan. So it's a bit of a woolly answer, I'm afraid, but actually it's the very nature of where we are at the start of the process, and as we go through the process, we can share much more, and actually some of this will be a bit clearer.
Thank you. So I think we're going over to the other side. So where's the thing? Do you want to go down? So who had? Well, perhaps the lady in the blue jumper who's got her hand up over there. Thank you.
My understanding is that you're possibly not wanting as many cars about.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that very well.
My understanding is you don't want so many cars about. So in the evenings when people are wanting to go out, how can they feel safe from the point of view as muggers and things of that description if you can't have any cars around for protection? Because from my understanding, you don't want them parking on the roads any longer. You're trying to move them away. Therefore, if you want to go... Oh, sorry, I've just realised I'm talking out the wrong end. Right, can you hear me now? Yeah. Right. So sorry. My understanding, from what I can hear, is that you're not really wanting cars parking, say, near the pubs and on the roads and the restaurants. You're wanting them tucked away in car parks. So if you're wanting to walk, say, in the evenings, how can you feel safe? I've walked through Sutton at night, and I don't want to do it again because you can get jumped on because there's nobody around to stop you being attacked. And it's something that really would worry me, and lots of other people too, I think.
All right, thank you really much. Thank you for that question. I don't want to sort of give the impression that we are anti-car, but and so there is certainly sort of provision sort of within the ideas for sort of parking provision and things like that. But I mean, ultimately, in Mole Valley, actually, the crime levels are pretty low. I don't know how it compares to Sutton, but we do quite well. We do have sort of public realm CCTV, and that sort of is another thing that we're dealing with this year. So I think we need to sort of be careful to sort of say we're not sort of anti-car, but we are making sure that the sort of the parking provision is in the right place. And by having actually more people in the town centre, it actually increases the safety. By having more people going to restaurants, by having more people sort of out and about, going to sort of theatres or leisure or whatever else, that is how you exclude crime, is by bringing more people into the town centre. I don't know if anyone else has a sort of an input to that in particular. This is sort of me speaking slightly off.
I'm happy. You want to? Is a question of when I mentioned, I don't know if you reference to any of the things I was mentioning, but the idea of the 15 minutes, 20 minutes radius cities where you can reach everything doesn't exclude the cars. They're still part of our life, and they will be for a while, but eventually they will be phased out. I mean, probably not in our life, so we don't know. What do? We design so that the safety is supported by the design. So there is better connectivity, there are more uses. You mentioned there are more people in the streets, there is better lighting, there is better landscape. At the moment, Bull Hill is an unsafe lamp that particularly people don't necessarily use as much as they could, because of the way it's designed, as well as the town centre. So it's a bit more holistic approach, and definitely doesn't exclude cars. Hopefully cars will become a bit more sustainable with less petrol and more electric. So there is a whole development in society that will eventually bring us a healthier place. And in the meantime, we respond to your concern that are mine as a woman in the street with the design. We work, for example, in even designing park with Make Space for Girls. We wanted to bring on board to relook at parks that are not designed just for a certain kind of gender or population, but will be safe for girls and will be safe for everybody. So that is at the forefront of the way we approach public spaces.
Okay. I know we have some online questions, so I'm going to try and do two here and then an online, and then we can try and be fair. Do you want to let us know what the first online question is?
So the first one is that people who work in Leatherhead often can't afford to live here, and how we're going to ensure affordable housing will be available.
Okay. So I can answer that in brief. So one of the sort of the criteria for the local plan that we are hopefully going to sort of get approved very shortly is to make sure that a certain amount of the buildings that are created have to be affordable, and a certain amount of them have to be for social rent and so on and so forth. So that is sort of the overarching sort of policy, and then we have to look at sort of how that interrelates with the developments that sort of come forward. I don't know, Lee and Alex, if you want to add anything in particular to that.
Yeah, I think that there's affordable with a capital A and affordable with a not capital A. So that in terms of planning policy, complying with the requisite local plan in terms of what the quantum of affordable housing is, will be something that we'll do as part of the planning application. So we will do that. I think the other reason why residential is more expensive is there's just not enough of it. So in terms of a supply and demand, the very nature that there's too many people wanting too few houses puts up the value of the house. So the combination of those two things will really help, providing, social rent apartments and different types of residential for different people with different needs will be part of what we do for the planning application. So we won't solve the whole housing crisis in Surrey, but actually by creating the right scheme with the right level of mix of units and uses, I think we'll go some way to helping.
Thank you. Right, I'm coming back over to this side. So gentleman with the dark jacket, yes?
Thanks very much. Just as the previous questioner in front of me here, I'm also a resident of overlooking the Bull Hill. And what I noticed in all the presentations here was that our road appears in most of them. I'm part of the Gravel Hill lot. So clearly we really care deeply about what's going to happen on Bull Hill. So I know the answer is it's probably a bit too early, but what's really important for us is have some sense of what you're planning on Bull Hill. I think that's really important right now, because right now I've got like nightmare scenario in my head. And what I really want to know is what you're doing at the road, what's going to happen at the front. What I don't want is a 7-story building on the hill, because I think that would destroy the sort of the architectural beauty of parts of Leatherhead. So my final point here really is to say that Leatherhead, to be a destination, has two really important elements that most other people don't have. They have the mole itself and its riverbank and how amazing that is. And then the second part is that a large part of Leatherhead is historic and beautiful. It hasn't been looked after very well in the last 10 years, but that's what it is. So what I want to understand is that whatever we do will enhance that, not ruin it. That was it.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So within the sort of the partnership agreement, there is sort of indications as to what we anticipate going on. But I think hopefully from the presentation this evening, it's clear that at the moment there are no plans as such, because that's what part of this is. But perhaps Alex and Lee want to sort of expand a little bit more about sort of the broad intentions in terms of Bull Hill and the Swan Centre.
Sure. I think, as we've said, it's too early at the moment, and we don't actually have a master plan. And actually the point of this public consultation phase that we're facing into now is to listen to people like you and the wider community that are directly impacted. So it'd be great to speak to you sort of in more detail as part of that public consultation that we will be kicking off in May. And at that point, we'll have some more firm plans that we'll be able to share with you.
So I think I'm going over...
The other point in terms of, the really special nature of Leatherhead is actually what's going to make the regeneration really, really great. And I think, speaking on a purely commercial term, if we create something that's hideous, actually we won't attract people and businesses into Leatherhead Town Centre. So it's really in the regeneration's interest to make sure that actually what we try and do is as sympathetic as we can, creating the drivers that we need to create that economic vibrancy within the town centre. The town centre doesn't die over the next 10, 20 decades or whatever it might be. And I think it's the really mix, and it is difficult. It is difficult to get that right mix, and that's part of what this conversation's about. It's really trying to understand what the people of Leatherhead want, what local businesses want, and how you balance that with housing need, affordable housing need, infrastructure investment, investment in the high street, and what local businesses want, together with land value back out to the council so they can invest locally. So there's a number of pushes and pulls that will have to be navigated over the next 12 months as this all comes together. But if we do this in a sort of comprehensive way, and we have this conversation on a regular basis, we have a better chance of balancing those competing needs sometimes.
Thank you. So I think the lady in... Oh, yeah, please. She's going over there. So, gentleman... A lady, sorry. Can't see which one you're going to.
Thank you. I'll just introduce myself because I don't actually live in Leatherhead. I'm Dr. Hilary Floyd. I'm a contract holder for the Mulbridge practice on Kingston Road. I thought that it was a lovely presentation. Sounds though Leatherhead's going to look lovely, and I particularly like the riverside development because I'm into nature. But I think my question and comments are really around community and also North Leatherhead, which until the very end of your presentation I thought you'd used your cookie cutter to cut it off from Leatherhead. I've been there for 4 years and I'm very aware of the social deprivation that goes on there. The fact that, 1 in 7 of the population use a food bank compared to 1 in 30 in other areas of Leatherhead. 40% of the kids have obesity. Poverty is there. Unemployment is there. A lot of depression, mental health. I suppose my question really is great to develop Leatherhead Town Centre, but is there not something we can do for North Leatherhead? It's been unloved for a long time. And to improve the well-being... to improve the well-being and the future of the people that live there, particularly our youngsters, our children and young people, it'd be really great to have some development there and to work with you. And I hear Lee talk about the social values of Kia and wanting to put something back into community. We're not the town centre. Patients can't always get to the town centre because they don't always have the money for the bus and it's a long walk. But perhaps there's something that could be considered in all these plans.
So thank you very much for that question. And it is difficult, isn't it? Because Transform Leatherhead should be talking about the whole of Leatherhead, but it is primarily focusing on the town centre and those particular things, because by bringing the town centre up, it will help to improve the surrounding areas. And the reason that I say that is a point that was raised right at the outset in terms of the objectives. One of the key objectives of Transform Leatherhead is to generate revenue for the council and to generate capital returns. How do we make improvements? How do we provide services? It's by making sure that we are getting in the resources to be able to go and do some of those things. I work relatively closely with the hub. I know all about what goes on at the hub, and I'm there sort of on a regular basis. And I know that we're looking at trying to work through some issues with other community buildings, for instance. But unless we have the funding to do so, and it doesn't come very often, it's really difficult. One of the other things I would say is that actually it's a question of identifying properties. Mole Valley doesn't own properties. So, for instance, the Trinity site, we know, is owned by the diocese. Unless the diocese want to do something with it, there's nothing we can do about that. I think we have to be a little bit realistic, because we can't go and build on properties that we don't own or land that we don't own. We have to sort of work through those difficult things. But certainly, one of the aims for me from Transform Leatherhead is to make sure that the council gets the resources that it will be able to use in the future to sort of improve other things and to carry on working with what we have in the meantime to carry on focusing on those areas. I'm happy for anyone else to leap in. Please do, Emma, yeah.
Right. We have a fantastic relationship as a council with Leatherhead Community Hub. We really value everything they are doing and advocating for that community. And we're particularly delighted to have you here tonight. It's fantastic to have that holistic view of that community. I still remember the forum where a member of Beatitude stood up with their handmade embroidered banner saying, we want just 1% of what's supposed to be invested in Leatherhead, we want that for Northhead. And we absolutely have to take that message on board. So the members are absolutely driving those conversations with the diocese and Surrey County Council to try and find a way of unlocking some of those sites on the recreation grounds. We are supporting the campaign to try and retain more than just a light post office service within North Edinburgh Community. So we are petitioning Tesco's to try and see if they will work with us to accommodate a full service post office, because that's what we need, not just click and collect and drop off within the Tesco footprint. Whether we'll be successful, we don't know, but if we don't try, we'll never know. In terms of Alex, why we appointed Keir, and we appointed them as a partner on the basis of a particular scheme, is because they share our emphasis on social value, and that's a real buzzword at the moment. But as an example, Alex and the team here, we want to do some work with the food bank. They say to us, we're inundated with volunteers, we don't need you. So we need to find the right project that will actually mean something. But the Thurfield has been identified as a school with whom we can actually encouraging participation in construction, design, and interest in the built environment, all activities that are really already strong in Surrey. We've got exemplar companies like Atkins Realis, KBR, real local employment opportunities, and trying to encourage our children who really struggle through COVID to see the full breadth of opportunities that are available from here right on their doorstep. It's not necessary to leave Leatherhead and go and work in London. You've got great opportunities locally. Let's hope we can unlock that potential for our young people. That's what we want to achieve through this long-term partnership with Keir. I mean, Alex, Lee, you want to pick up on that?
We've already started some of those conversations already on how we unlock some of those potential employment and work experience opportunities for that youth community. So we will continue to drive those conversations to unlock those opportunities going forward.
And it's not just young people. We have the Fairfield Centre, which is one of the jewels in the crown of the council. I don't know whether Kira or Bridget want to touch on that service we're incredibly proud of. And also got Mole Valley Life, again, another amazing service that as a council we are still passionate to protect and support. So we generally are trying to be as inclusive of everybody in Leatherhead and do our best to meet everybody's diverse needs.
Thank you. Should we have another internet question?
The children's playground at Bull Hill will need to be closed during any building work. What arrangements will there be during this long period, or will it be provided somewhere else?
Sure. So we absolutely acknowledge, as part of the emerging master plan, the need to replace the play facility at Bull Hill. Yes, it is likely to be closed as part of the development, albeit we do look to continue the use and the facilities on site as part of our phasing plans. We're looking at alternative opportunities for where we can have a temporary facility elsewhere in the town centre, and the Swan Centre is somewhere that we're looking at as a potential for that.
And Riverside Park could be, or Riverside, I'd say, we identified a natural play area there, so although it's not as close to the town centre as the Bull Hill site, that could be another interim solution while the works are taking place. So we will literally look at all the opportunities that we can to try and re-provide as much as possible.
Thank you. Right, I'm coming back over to this side. Martin, shall I go for you? Pardon? Down here.
Yeah, hello. My name's Martin Williams. I wonder if I could not so much ask a question, just make a couple of points. These points will obviously come up in the consultation, but I thought it was instructive when the architect was talking about what you're seeking to create, that there was lots of words like dynamic and urban and thrusting and so on and so forth. Or perhaps not the last word, but yet when you asked residents what their key words were for why they like living in Leatherhead, their words were peaceful, greenery, countryside, so on and so forth. And when the district council proposed a riverside park with pictures of hard landscaping and children skaterboarding and so on and so forth, the reaction from the consultees was no, it's a beautiful riverside area which is green and country and so on and so forth, and that's how we would like it to stay. So I wonder if you would just bear in mind when you start your formulation of your ideas in your mind, that is what the ethos that the people of Leatherhead are seeking in whatever development you carry out. And it's not to look like an inner city area in Birmingham or Glasgow or London. The second point, and if people disagree with me, well, perhaps they should shout now. The second point I would like to make is that most people I had conversations with thought that the council's planning consent that they granted themselves at Claire and James' house was a fairly significant overdevelopment of the site. And the justification for it was that they needed to generate capital in order to spend on the Riverside Park, albeit perhaps now there'll be slightly less capital needed. I think that you should bear in mind that when the first drawings of what was proposed on Bull Hill, going back 7 or 8, 9 years, were produced, they showed multiple what we would call tower blocks. And all the people I spoke to said, okay, they're going to build housing, albeit it's flats and not houses, on the park, but it's multi-storey tower blocks. Well, no one in Leatherhead wants multi-storey tower blocks built on the park, I don't think. Again, if people disagree, they should say so. Logic for that, obviously, there was, and has been stated today, is that Mole Valley District Council, I mean, it's understandable that you need to generate a profit, although you didn't actually mention that, but obviously you're a commercial enterprise, you deserve a profit for the work you carry out. But Mole Valley are suggesting that they need to generate large sums of capital and revenue so that they can spend it in other areas. Well, there's no point in them generating all this capital to be spent on other things when in the process they've ruined Leatherhead. So would just bear that in mind, and sorry, that's my tuppence worth for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think they were necessarily questions, but does anybody want to respond to anything on that? I think probably we've already said it in terms of until we've had the engagement and the consultations, it's very difficult to identify. But equally, as Lee sort of raised earlier, there are competing sort of claims that that we all have to work through in terms of trying to maintain or trying to sort of create a really thriving market town, and how do you do that? And inevitably there are going to be compromises in various different ways at different points. So I think I'll go on to the next question if I can. So I think, Michael, you've had your hand up a couple of times. Oh, the microphone's coming. Don't worry.
I've got a loud voice anyway.
Yeah.
Just to say thank you, Kira. Like most of the councillors around here, you actually are very good at listening. So thank you for that. But as you probably know from the communications I occasionally have, we don't always get quite such a good listening response from certain officers within the council. So that's be my first point about it. A point to Lee, Alex and Katja, maybe when you first your consultation, maybe some sort of prize, maybe with schools, etc., incentivise people to do things. But the main point I want to mention, Kira, was about Clare House and James House. It's in a very, very beautiful part of the town, exceptionally beautiful. One of the first things when my wife and I moved into this area 30 years ago, we had a son who was a month old at the time, was actually how green and beautiful this area is. And to incentivise Katja and Lee and Alex again, I mean, have you actually been in to see the closest neighbour to Clare House yet?
So the pub.
The pub.
So,
dating back to Queen Elizabeth I, I mean, never let the truth get in the way of a good story, etc. there and the rest of it. But I would hope whatever you're planning to do there takes that into account as well. I've got a practical issue with that one. I'll bring it through to me when I first came to this town 30 years ago. I moved to this town basically because I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. The company I was working at had closed down a manufacturing unit down in Horsham. They moved up to Regent Park up in Leatherhead. I then got headhunted by another pharmaceutical company. And one of the attractions was they were going to move to Clare House. it hit so many boxes. It was a nice area. The transport links to and from Leatherhead are marvellous. Last night, for example, we went out and we'll big it up. Went up by a London transport bus. Went up to Kingston, watched a bloke called Sir Rod Stewart. How lucky are we? But why didn't we actually? Didn't I continue having a very short commute into work? Just simply going to have to get my bike and go down to Clare House. We actually got the board of directors for the company, who was actually from Belgium. We actually presented a very good case, great area, great education. You can get all the staff into this area. We actually had 5 senior directors from Belgium come down. And what happened? The place was under 2 foot of water. And every year, and everyone around here will know about it, there was also the annual spectacle when you look at the local newspapers of the local football club, Leatherhead Football Club, Leatherhead Lip. Great story once again. We're not very good sometimes of advertising how wonderful this town is. It gets flooded over. They have a complete rebuild of actually getting their clubhouse because it's under 2 foot of water. So don't underestimate the flood alleviation. And I'm maybe going to come up with a point here because you mentioned, Kira, that the practicalities of it, that getting your funding. Well, another big news story recently was actually we've got this wonderful, wonderful, beautiful river, short stream. It's called the River Mole because it disappears underground at times, ends up down into the Thames. And we've got the disgusting side of things about the pollution going there with Thames Water. I noticed there's no one from Thames Water here. I feel sorry for the Environment Agency because they have to deal with what comes out of it. It's what's going into it. And it's a terrible, terrible state. So why can't we actually maybe get some funding from this Thames Water, etc., to actually alleviate some of that problem? Because don't underestimate it. You can get the most wonderful plans around there, but you've only got to go into that wonderful little pub, which I've done in the past, and the Environment Agency have got some stuff they've had to literally put overnight with blue plastic lining, metal girders, etc., on it. So please do underestimate that. And for heaven's sake, get Thames Water involved on it and actually come up with some solutions, preferably some money, to actually make it a wonderful place. Because I think Leatherhead is just wonderful. We've got the greenery. Maybe the link down from Bridge Road definitely could be improved. Because, for example, the old fish and chip shop which disappeared, and it's basically just been lying there. And if you look up above there, there's actually the most incredible greenery growing out of the chimney, which is about to probably collapse any moment. So another example of an absentee landlord just waiting for good things. So I think you need to look into those infrastructure in between the plans. Okay?
Thank you, Mike. I will just come back a little bit because I think they're all really valid points that you make. I just want to clarify. So the developer for Clare and James House is not Kier. So we can't announce who the developer is, but it's not Kier. So what happens with Clare and James House will be a different developer. I mentioned the planning application that is already in place, and that has been deliberately designed in the way that it is the community facility and the cafe on the ground floor, precisely because we know that area floods, and that's why you wouldn't be building residential properties on that ground floor, so that the design can take into account the fact that it might need to take that. I think in terms of sort of Thames Water and the water quality, that's a point that councillors, politicians are endlessly taking up. It's a national problem, isn't it, rather than something that necessarily Mole Valley can do. But in fact, I can't remember who it was, but in fact, Martin, I think you said something about might need less capital in order to put in place the plans for the Riverside. No, the plans for the Riverside, the concepts that you saw vastly exceed the amount of money that we expect to get from Clare and James House. And so we will be looking at grant funding and so on and so forth. And clearly, if we can try and get money from any source, whether it's government or other funds, or whether it's Thames Water, we will look to do that. Are we on to another internet question? Oh, please, Lee, did you want to jump in with something? Sorry.
About your experience about having an office and relocating to Leatherhead, and I think that's a really important part, actually. I think as part of the mix of uses that we want to discuss coming into the town centre is actually re-establishing some office use. There's lots of businesses around Leatherhead that actually now, with sustainability criteria that corporates actually really do need to drive for, some of these office buildings can't satisfy that need. So if there's no offices sort of on a low carbon basis with modern amenities that these businesses actually can locate into, the danger is they'll move out of the area and actually employment deteriorates further. Yeah. Yeah, well, we're a really good example here. So we've made commitments as a corporate, as a FTSE 250 company now, to actually reduce our carbon footprint. So we can't, post 2030, occupy offices that aren't actually really sustainable. So as part of the mix of uses that we want to bring into Leatherhead is to create some of this employment type generation. So actually people do and can want to live and relocate in the town centre. Otherwise you will lose that employment. So as part of the mix, we want to do that.
I think we're on to an internet question again. Is that right?
Yes, so there's quite a few on
Right,
a similar
so I think
theme.
we probably have time for one more.
Okay,
That's it,
so
unfortunately.
I'm going to group a few of them together. What's the kind of financial exposure for Mill Valley District Council? What's in place to protect us from a situation like other councils have found themselves in recently?
Okay, so I'm going to let Emma and Lee answer those.
Start and Lee, you jump in. So it would have been very tempting for us as a local authority, faced with the sort of sentiment from residents, like, we just want to see something happen, say, you know what, we'll just do it ourselves. But that would have put a huge amount of risk on the council, both in terms of funding it, but then if we didn't get it right, we'd be stuck with buildings and flats that we couldn't then sell because nobody wanted them, because we hadn't got the design right, and that would have added to the financial exposure of the council. So although that would have been in some ways an easier response, we stuck with the procurement process, and it took 4 years, 2 years on pause because of the pandemic, then a year of revisiting everything because of the impact of Ukraine and the cost of living crisis. So it's taken much longer than we'd hoped to get to this point, which is why October was such a critical moment. The council's only obligation in relation to our partnership with Keir is to contribute the land at Bull Hill and the Swan Centre. But we have elected to, because it's more cost effective, to put some initial seed funding into the joint venture to minimise the cost of finance. So we've pledged to contribute £400,000 of, you're right, taxpayers' money to help forward fund those very early activities, such as working with TP Bennett, all the technical surveys, and a lot of the sort of planning advisory work. And we chose that because it was better value for the taxpayer. But going forward, I'm going to hand over to Lee. It's Keir and then third-party funders who will bring forward the rest of that development. And do you want to explain how that will work, Lee?
Yeah, so for each phase of the development that we will embark on, we have a governance process within our company where you go and get approval for the capital, but we envisage spending around £20 million of Keir capital, augmented by other forms of financing from local businesses wanting to relocate and helping to fund some of the offices, or from an affordable housing perspective, engaging with a registered social provider who will help us deliver some of the affordable housing. So phase by phase, there'll be a very detailed financial breakdown of what money is required, how it's going to be spent, and actually where it comes from. Some of it will be, say, equity, some of it will be what we call debt, actually, corporate finance. So a mixture of those things. And then we have the ability as well, Mill Valley have the ability of investing their land value, which we pay them as part of that, to reinvest in the scheme if they so want to. And then that might create really interesting different forms of investment that can help pay for services. So there's lots of flexibility around the financial structure, but actually it's completely within the control of the council in terms of whether they want to do that or not. It's really, really important about actually trying to get the right product with the right type of finances to deliver this thing. I think the viability piece, it's sometimes a bit of a dirty word, but if the scheme is not viable, nothing gets done. You can see that actually stalled around the country, post-COVID world. So the focus on actually what we're doing, how we're doing it, how we're financing it, will be an integral part of what we do with the master plan.
Okay, lovely.
Can I ask a question, please?
So this will have to be the last one because we're after 9. Please do.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation this evening. But I have to planters in the high street containing cigarette butts, cigarette packets, and your comment, please. Could I please ask you who gave the decision and who set the budget for those planters?
Yeah, happy with it. So, very, very happy to answer that. Every councillor every local councillor was consulted on the planters. So that's every councillor in North Leatherhead, every councillor in South Leatherhead, and the Surrey County Council Surrey County Councillor responsible for Leatherhead and Fetcham. They were all consulted and they all gave the go-ahead. In terms of the funding, I know you say that the council has paid. I do need to reiterate it's Section 106 funding, so that is funding that has been paid by developers, so it's not taxpayers' money per se, it's not coming from taxpayers, although I accept absolutely it could potentially be spent on other things. No, well, it couldn't, because Section 106 can't, yes, it's fixed. Yes, yeah.
And I know that is the
yeah, so we have to spend Section 106 money on certain things. We can't spend it on other things. If we don't spend it, it goes back to the developers. And so the issue that we had with the planters, as I hopefully explained, was that we have to have the planters there because they are a safety thing required by the Highways Authority. We cannot do without them. And I did try to put forward a scheme to say that we didn't need to have quite so many, and I was put very firmly in my place and told, no, we have to have a certain number. So we have to have the planters there. The ones that were there were deteriorating because they were never intended to be long-term planters. So all councillors were consulted, all councillors gave go-ahead, and that's where we are. In terms of the maintenance budgets, Emma, do you know off the top of your head how much it will cost us going forward? Sorry.
If I say a number, I will get it wrong. It's completely funded within our existing grounds maintenance contract. It's a minimal additional cost for the council. All I can say is that I don't think anybody was happy with what has been installed on the High Street. As Kira alluded to earlier, all the ward members and the county council have agreed a plan to reduce the number, which is actually 51. I think about 17 are going to be removed, they're going to be repositioned, and I think the last update from county was that work should happen, all things being equal, next week. There'll be a very small delay before we can actually get the plants in, but I hope that once they've been reallocated and they're planted up, they won't look as in your face as they do now, but it's something that none of us have been happy with, so we share your pain.
I mean, they wouldn't for a start. So we come 5 years down the line.
So we're told they're hardwood, and with proper maintenance they should last 10 years. But again, maintenance is going to be key.
So I think that we're probably drawing to an end now. I'm sorry that we haven't managed to get every question asked. I think it's still possible to submit an online question, and no doubt if people do submit online questions, we will be able to respond to them on the internet and try and put those answers up there. So hopefully that will help. Thank you very much. I can see everyone dashing off, but it's been a pleasure to be here this evening, so thank you. Thank you very much to our external guests today, so Alex, Lee and Katya for giving up their evening as well. And I really encourage everybody to keep in touch and get involved. Thank you.